Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the day of the NBA draft. It has finally come, and I am so excited to go through each of my favorite 46 prospects in this draft and go through why I think that each of them will become NBA rotational players at some point in their careers. I have them tiered into 5 groups. The first tier is players that could become superstars. The second tier is guys with realizable all-star potential. The third tier is guys that I think will be high-level starters. The fourth tier is guys that have potential to become starters and have upside to maybe even make it past that. And finally, the fifth tier is rotation level players. As we go through each tier, I'll give reminders of that every so often so that you can keep in mind what each tier means. Before we get into this big board, however, I want to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy these videos. I've been cranking out a lot of content lately, and I've been enjoying a lot of support on that, so I hope that can continue, and I'm very appreciative of it. Without further ado, let's get into my big board. Like I said before, I have this broken into 5 tiers. The first tier is guys that I think have superstar upside. Most people that do this kind of tier do not have a single player from this draft class in their tier 1. However, I'm not most people, and I actually do have one player, and that is LaMelo Ball. Allow me to explain. I think that if LaMelo hits his peak as a player, which would be he continues to have a generational skill of his passing and playmaking ability, his ball handling continues to improve, and he becomes one of the 5 best ball handlers in the entire NBA. His shooting improves, and he can knock down the 3 at a 36 to 38% mark, and his defense improves due to improvement of concentration and overall effort on that end of the floor. And with his high basketball intelligence, I think that that's certainly possible. You take all that together, and you've probably got a top 15 player in the league. Right now, I think the 15th best player in the NBA is probably something like Jason Tatum, and I think it's pretty safe to call Jason Tatum a superstar. So if LaMelo does reach that full potential, I do think that he could become a superstar, and that's why I have him in tier 1. Tier 2, we have 3 guys. Just a reminder, this tier is guys with all-star potential, and I do think that one of these 3 guys is really going to surprise you. At number 2, I have James Wiseman. Obviously, this isn't the surprise pick. Wiseman has a chance to become a really high-level big man who can finish at the rim, is an excellent rim runner in the pick and roll, hopefully can shoot the ball from the three-point line at some point, and is a fantastic and influential defender at the NBA level. If he can put all of this together, he has a chance to be a Defensive Player of the Year contender and an all-star level player. Think Miles Turner, but better on the offensive end. At number 3, I have Anthony Edwards, who went to Georgia this past season. Edwards has all the potential in the world. He is very physically gifted, and there's a chance that he can grow into a really, really high caliber player, and I considered him more for tier 1 than I did with Wiseman, but overall I have enough questions about his overall game that I'm not quite ready to put him up there. I do think, though, that due to his physical gifts as a very strong guy who has a long wingspan, has good size for a 2-guard, and really is also pretty skilled with an ability to get to an open jump shot and also get to the rim. It's all about shot selection with him, and if he can improve that while also becoming a better defender, this guy's got a very high ceiling, and for that reason, he's my number 3 guy in this draft. At number 4, the 3rd guy in the all-star tier, I have Tyrese Maxey. I get this is going to be super controversial. I know that tons of people are not going to like this. I've seen people that don't even have Maxey in their top 20, but I am absolutely enamored with the guy. I think that he's going to end up being a really, really good NBA player. I think he's going to be a really good defender at the point of attack. I think he can make smart decisions and rotations off of the ball. I believe in him as a guy who's going to have enough burst to be able to create penetration and get to the rim at a decent level. He's going to be able to attack closeouts. I believe that he's going to become a solid jump shooter, and as of right now, he is one of the better step back jumpers in the, not step back, pull up jumpers in the entire draft. So I'm a big believer in Tyrese Maxey. I think his ceiling is Donovan Mitchell and his floor is Eric Bledsoe. So at best, you're getting an all-star level guy who's a very good combo guard, and at worst, you're getting a limited point guard who has a lot of strength and capabilities on the defensive floor, end of the floor, but a lack of a jump shot ends up really hurting him. So overall, I'm really high on Tyrese Maxey. I get that this might seem crazy to a lot of people, but I just think that he's going to end up being a really good NBA player. If he reaches that Donovan Mitchell ceiling, watch out, because I think that this guy can be a real good player for whatever team drafts him, and if he falls out of the lottery, he is going to be the steal of the draft. After that, we go to Tier 3. Tier 3 is guys that I think are going to be really high-quality starters. My fifth player, and the first guy in this tier, is Deni Avdija. I think that an interesting comparison for Avdija is Draymond Green. He will never be the defender that Draymond is, but his ability as a playmaking wing is very similar to Draymond, and for that reason, I think that he's going to be able to become a starter based off of that skill alone. The ball handling and playmaking he has at a 6'9" height is really unusual. I think that he's a really good team defender. He needs to become a better on-the-ball defender, but if he can do that, he has a chance to actually be a really good defensive player. Not quite all defense level, but definitely a high-impact guy on that end of the floor. It really comes down to the shooting with him, and if that shooting can click, I think he becomes a really high-quality starter, and maybe a guy that I should have been considering for Tier 2. At number 6, I have Tyrese Halliburton, a guard from Iowa State. Halliburton has a really high floor, maybe the highest floor of anyone in this whole draft outside of like James Wiseman. I think that he ends up being a really good option as a combo guard who can handle the ball, plays good defense, both on the ball, he keeps guys in front of him, and off of the ball, he's a really good team defender that makes smart rotations. He can shoot the ball off of catching shoots, and he also is a solid playmaker and can create some open looks for his teammates. So overall, I believe in Tyrese Halliburton as a really solid option as a secondary playmaker, and for that reason, I have him 6th on my board. 7th, we have Onyeka Okongwu, a big man from USC. I had Okongwu higher than this for a lot of the draft process, but I just have some questions about his ability as a playmaker, and if he doesn't develop the playmaking and he doesn't shoot it, then what else is he going to do on the offensive end? So I'm not sure that he has the same high floor that Deni Avdija and Tyrese Halliburton do, and for that reason I have him below those two, but he's still in Tier 3. He's still the 7th best guy in this draft, and I think he's going to end up being a really at least average to maybe above average starting center in the NBA. 8th on my board is Devin Vassell, a wing from Florida State. This is another high floor, low ceiling type guy, but if he can figure out how to create some shots for himself as well as his teammates off of the bounce, then there's a chance that he exceeds all expectations and ends up being a guy who has Tier 2 capabilities. Chris Middleton could be an idea of what the ceiling looks like for him, but in all reality, I think he ends up being a Danny Green type player that's a really strong role player, can shoot the ball well from distance, can play solid defense, and that gets him to 8th in this draft. At number 9, I have Isaac Okoro from Auburn, another wing. Okoro has a bit higher of a ceiling than Vassell, but overall, I think I have enough questions about his jump shot that I have him just below Vassell. At first, I had him in Tier 4, but after further consideration, I think that he's a strong enough defensive player, as well as slasher and playmaker on the offensive end, that he's going to be a starter no matter what. The swing skill is the jumper. If he can figure out, there's a chance he hops into being a top 5 guy in this draft. If it doesn't work out, then he's probably just a 5th starter. Rounding out Tier 3 at number 10, I have Killian Hayes, a point guard from Ulm in France. Hayes has potential to become the point guard that every NBA team wants. A guy who can create shots for himself, can create shots for his teammates, is a solid 3-point shooter, and can play some level of defense. He's going to be competent on that end of the floor at the very least. I have questions about the upside, and I really don't see it with him. I think His best case scenario would be like a slightly worse D'Angelo Russell, but if he does figure it out, maybe he can become a top 10 point guard in the NBA. I have doubts, and that's why I have him down here at 10, but I do think that he ends up being a starter on a team as a combo guard who has some skill. Heading into Tier 4, this is guys that have starter upside, but are definitely going to be rotational players, and maybe, like I said, can reach that upside of being a high-level starter. At number 11, kicking off Tier 4, I have Patrick Williams, another wing from Florida State. Williams has a good feel for the game and is a good passer for a wing. He also is a really good defensive player and has a chance to be an excellent rebounder for a wing due to his surplus size. I have enough questions about what he's really going to do on offense and whether or not that defense is elite enough to carry him into being a starter level player that I don't have him in Tier 3, but he just missed the cut and I think is going to end up being a really solid NBA player, and I would certainly look to draft him at the end of the lottery here. At number 12, I have Obi Toppin, a big man from Dayton. Toppin is a guy that I am not as high on as others are, but I can see the potential for him to become a starter at the NBA level due to his skills on offense. I think that the defense takes enough away from that, however, that he ends up being a lightning rod, guy who can really get buckets for you off the bench. If he can figure it out on defense, though, his ceiling is much higher than that, but I have questions, so that's why I have him here at 12. Number 13, we have the biggest question mark in the entire draft, Aleksej Pokusevski from Olympiakos B in Greece. He's initially from Serbia. Pokusevski can really handle the ball and can also shoot it. He's 7'1", but only 195 pounds. So overall, if he can fill out his frame, which I believe that there's probably a good chance that he does, considering the NBA strength programs, this guy has a chance to really pop and become one of the better players from this draft class. I think that the upside swing is definitely worth a shot, either at the second or at the latter part of the lottery, or really just the middle part of the first round overall. At number 14, I have Saddiq Bey from Villanova. Saddiq is going to be a really high-level role player in the NBA as a guy who can knock down three-point shooters, play excellent defense, and be versatile and able to switch off. He also has some ability as a playmaking wing on the offensive end of the floor. And for all those reasons, I think that Bey ends up being a really good role player and definitely someone that is worth a lottery pick. At 15, I have Kira Lewis, a guard from Alabama. Lewis is one of the fastest, probably the fastest player in the draft. And if he can fill out his frame, which I believe he will, there's a chance that he becomes an above-average starting point guard. A ceiling here could be someone like Mike Conley, while the floor could be something more like the Morris, the backup point guard for the Nuggets. I don't know why his name's not coming into my head right now. Monte Morris. But overall, I think that Lewis is a top 15 guy in this draft, and he's likely to go in that top 15. Rounding out Tier 4, at number 16, I have R.J. Hampton, who played for the New Zealand Breakers this past season. Hampton showed some tantalizing potential during his time in high school, and he's really athletic. It really comes down to if he can figure out the shot, and if he does, there's a chance that he really outperforms the place where he goes in the draft. I have enough questions, however, that I have him here at 16, but I do think that there's a chance that he becomes a really good NBA player, and that's why I have him at the bottom half of Tier 4. Tier 5 is rotation players, and kicking off that tier is Desmond Bane. I really like Bane as one of the better shooters in this draft. I think that he is very versatile with his shot and is going to be able to shoot it off of screens and off of some movement. He also has a chance to be an impactful defender, although definitely not an NBA level guy. He's going to make smart decisions and play well on that end of the court. I also think he has ability as a passer. For that reason, he is my top guy in Tier 5 as a guy who will either be a bottom-end starter or a very good impact player off the bench. Number 18, I have Aaron Nesmith, a wing from Vanderbilt. One of the better shooters in this class, similar to Bane, but I have Bane above him because I think that Desmond will end up being a far better defender than Aaron will. However, if Nesmith can figure out on the defensive end, he does have some potential to be a shot creator on offense, and for that reason, he belongs here in the top 20. At number 19, I have Malachi Flynn, one of my favorite guys in this draft. If he can fill out his frame, I think that there's a chance that he can be a really, really solid NBA point guard. Think Fred VanVleet. If he can't, he ends up probably being a really good backup, maybe something more like a George Hill type player. Either way, you're getting a good NBA player, and I'm a big believer in Malachi Flynn as a top 20 talent type guy in this draft. At number 20, I have Zeke Nnaji, a big man from Arizona. I think that Nnaji has a chance to be a really good player and a guy that's going to be really different from what he was in college. If he can figure out how to shoot the three ball and improve his lateral quickness on defense, I think he's going to be able to be a stretch four who can play some really versatile defense and guard multiple positions. So for that reason, I have him as a top 20 guy. At number 21, I have Tyrell Terry, a guard from Stanford. He can really shoot it, and he also is a really smart player and is going to be a good playmaker, but I think it's going to take some time for his body to develop to the NBA level. But once he does, I think he's going to be a really good role player as a guy who can really shoot it. Think Seth Curry. At number 22, I have Cole Anthony, who I was really debating between him and Terry. Overall, I went with Terry because Terry's biggest strength of three-point shooting is a bigger strength at this moment than Anthony's strength of athleticism. So I went with Terry over Anthony. I think Anthony could either be a bottom-level starting point guard in the NBA or a really nice option coming off the bench. Something like Lou Williams would be a viable comparison in my opinion. Number 23, I have Tre Jones. Jones is a really good defensive player at the point of attack. He's a good playmaker on the offensive end, and he can also shoot it well off of the catch and shoot. If he can figure out a three-point shot off of the bounce, I think that's where he can end up being a really good starting point guard in this league due to his chance to be a really impactful pick-and-roll ball handler. At number 24, I have Isaiah Stewart, a big man from Washington. I think his floor is Enes Kanter as a guy who can really get you a bucket on the offensive end and has some offensive versatility. However, he needs to make some improvements on defense if he wants to become a guy who doesn't get played off the court in playoffs. I think a ceiling for him could be something like Yusuf Nurkic if he can continue to improve the defense. But if he doesn't, there's a chance that he's just a backup center for life. At number 25, I have Elijah Hughes, a wing from Syracuse. I'm a big believer in Hughes because I think he's going to shoot it at the high level, and I also think that his defense is going to be pretty good as well. He's also capable of creating some shots for his teammates, so I think that Hughes could be one of the bigger sleepers in the draft, and I have him in my top 25. At number 26, I have Precious Achiuwa, a big man from Memphis. Achiuwa has a lot of defensive potential, and he's already very good on that end of the floor. He's a defensive playmaker and can get lots of steals and blocks for your team that allows you to run out in transition. I have enough questions about his role is going to be on the offensive end of the floor that it really takes away from that defensive stuff. But if he can figure it out on offense, improve his decision-making, and also become a better shooter, there's a chance that Precious Achiuwa becomes a really impactful stretch five in the NBA, and he could be one of the bigger sleepers in this draft. At number 27, I have Leandro Bolmaro, a draft and stash player who played overseas this past season. I think that there's a good chance that he goes in the first round because a lot of teams are going to find that draft and stash ability to be pretty valuable. I think Bolmaro has a chance to be a secondary playmaker from the wing position, and like I said with Deni Avdija before, I think that that's a pretty important skill to have, and if he's able to develop and really tone his skill, there's a chance that he is, once again, one of the bigger sleepers in this draft and will be considered one of the, like, how did this guy drop all the way to the 25th pick? You know, that type of player. At 28, I have Robert Woodard from Mississippi State. Super good athlete, really good defensive player, can shoot the ball from three. Questions are if he can do much else from that. I am not really buying it, but that skill set alone is enough to get him drafted in the first round, and that's why I have him at 28. At 29, I have Sam Merrill, one of my favorite players in this draft, a point guard from Utah State. He can shoot it really well, and I think he has a chance to be the Duncan Robinson of this draft due to his ability to shoot the ball off of dribble handoffs as well as off of screens, on-ball and off-ball screens, and also off of the bounce. He has pretty limitless range, and that makes him a very exciting guy to watch. I also think he has some shot creation abilities and is a competent defensive player, so for that reason I have him all the way up as a first-round grade in my top 30. At number 30, I have Theo Maledon. who is coming over from overseas, played for Asvel in France, I believe, this past season. If Maledon can develop into more of an NBA skill type player, I think he's got a chance to be a really good rotational point guard who's really good in the pick and roll game and can be a really good playmaker in transition. Maybe Lonzo Ball type player could be a ceiling for him, but I think it's going to take some time for him to develop, and it's going to be a long time before he can reach that ceiling. At number 31, I have Paul Reed, a big man from DePaul. Reed has a very enticing frame and a lot of good defensive traits. If he can figure out his offensive skill, then there's a chance that he is one of the bigger sleepers in this draft and could end up being the steal of the draft in the second round. At 32, I have Josh Green, a wing from Arizona. A lot of people have Green up in the lower part of their 20s, but I just don't see it because, you know, he's a really good defender, and a lot of people see a wing who can play good defense, and you say, oh, he's going to be a 3-and-D guy. Well, Josh Green can't shoot. For that reason, I have him outside my top 30. At 33, I have Jalen Smith from Maryland, another guy who a lot of people have much higher. I just really don't see him being that high of an impact player in the NBA. I think that there's a good chance that he becomes a backup center due to his ability to shoot the ball and be a rim protector, but I don't see him doing much else outside of that. I don't think he has any defensive versatility on offense. I don't see him as much of a creator or really a guy who can put the ball on the ground at all. So I have Jalen Smith outside the first round, and I don't really see what all the hype about him is about. At 34, I have Cassius Winston, a point guard from Michigan State. I really like Cassius, and I think that there's a chance that he could become a bottom-level point guard, starting point guard in the NBA, just because of his ability to run an offense, and he's so smart on the defensive end of the floor. He's a really good playmaker, and he can also really shoot it. So I think that he ends up being an NBA player that sticks around. I just don't know that he has the athleticism to have any sort of a ceiling outside of being just a competent role player. At 35, I have Emmanuel Quickley from Kentucky. He can really shoot it, and in case you haven't noticed, I really love guys that can shoot it from the point guard position. If he can continue to improve on defense, and he does have a really long wingspan that could allow him to develop on that end of the floor, there's a chance that Quickley sticks around as a solid NBA rotational piece, and he's definitely a guy that I would want to take a second-round pick. I would want to take with a second-round pick. At 36, I have Skylar Mays, another guard from LSU. Mays can really play. He can shoot the ball. He can play solid defense, and he's a good playmaker. I would not be shy with drafting him in the high 30s or even mid-30s, and I think that there's a chance that he develops into a rotational level guard/wing player out of LSU. At 37, I have Tyshawn Alexander, one of my favorite players in this draft. Really, really good defensive player at the point of attack. I think that on offense, he can really shoot it, and he's going to develop an ability to attack closeouts. That's going to make him a really valuable offensive player overall. I think he is the sleeper of this draft, my number one sleeper, and I would really, really, really want to draft him any spot from 35 on in this draft. If he goes undrafted, I think he should be signed immediately because this guy has a chance to be a starting point guard at best, and if at worst, I think he will be a rotation type guy. At number 38, I have Xavier Tillman, a big man from Michigan State. He's got a really good feel for the game, and that allows him to be a solid defensive player as well as a good playmaker from the center position. I have questions about his size, though, and if you can't figure that out, then there's a chance that he is better suited to be an overseas type player. At number 39, I have Grant Riller from Charleston. I'm not a big believer in Grant Riller because I believe that he's going to score the ball well at any level, but I don't think that he's much of a playmaker, and he's a bad defensive player as well, so I would not want to take him anywhere above 35, and even then I have enough questions that I would really think about passing on him. At 40, I have Jaden McDaniels, who is only here because of his potential, but from what I saw at Washington this past season, you can throw this guy out the window. I don't have any faith in him becoming an NBA player, and he's going to get drafted purely on potential, and he's going to be a bust. So, enough said. Daniel Oturu is an interesting guy to me because I think he's got a lot of potential to be a really good offensive big man who has some potential in the post, as well as a guy who can shoot the ball from the three-point line. Could be a really enticing stretch 5 was what I meant to say there. But I have enough questions about his defense. I think that he really can't guard the pick and roll at a high level at all. He's pretty bad at guarding the pick and roll. So with how pick and roll oriented the NBA is, I think there's a chance that he falls out of the league, and for that reason I have him down here at 41. 42, I have Mason Jones from Arkansas. This is a guy that really interests me as someone who can really light up the scoreboard and score the ball at an excellent rate. But he wasn't great on defense this past year, and I'm not sure if the scoring will translate to the NBA level. So for that reason, I think that he is more of either a back-end rotation piece or a guy who doesn't make it in the NBA. Jordan Nwora can shoot it. He's my 43rd guy, a wing out of Louisville, but I don't know what else he does. He's not much of a defender. He is not much off the dribble, so really you're going to be counting on him to either shoot the ball off catching shoots or shoot the ball coming off the screens, and I don't think that he has the ability of Duncan Robinson to create those shots for himself. So for that reason, I have him down here at 43. However, he can really shoot it, and for that reason, there's a chance that he sticks around. 44 at Marcus Howard, pretty much the point guard version of Jordan Nwora. However, I had to put him on here because Marquette guy from Wisconsin, rocking my Bucks sweatshirt today. And if Marcus can figure out the playmaking, can figure out the defense, there's a chance that he really pops off and becomes a solid spark plug guy off of your bench. So for that reason, I have some interest in taking him in the middle part of the second round. Killian Tillie is my 45th guy. Tillie would probably be a first-round type guy if it weren't for the injury questions, but due to those questions, he's down here. He's a really smart defensive player who can shoot the ball from distance on offense. That's a valuable guy to have as a stretch big man, so I think that he'll probably get drafted and get a guaranteed contract, but outside of that, I don't see him going much higher than the 40s due to the injury questions. And finally, at 46, the last guy that I view as a rotational piece in this draft is Peyton Pritchard, a point guard from Oregon. He's pretty much Marcus Howard, but he can't shoot the three ball as well, and he's a bit better at the playmaking and defense type stuff. However, he doesn't have a skill that really makes me believe in him, and I think that his best case scenario is as a decent backup point guard. So, a backup point guard is a rotational piece technically, but I don't think that there's much upside here, and for that reason I have him at 46. Well, there we go. My top 46 guys in this NBA draft and the 46 players from this class that I believe will end up being rotational pieces on an NBA team someday. Let me know in the comment section who I missed. I will let you know that the players that just missed were Devon Dotson, Jahmius Ramsey, and Tyler Bey. However, at the end of the day, I couldn't quite consider those guys rotation prospects. Let me know what you think in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. This took a lot of work, so I would really appreciate it if you gave me some support there. I think that's going to be it for me, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you all again very soon.